Perfect. Okay. So we will kick off. Kim, can you move to the next slide, please? So hi and welcome to September's CEE Monthly Members Call. It's really lovely to see so many of you here today. Today's call has an income generation and share offers focus. We are welcoming 3 speakers today. We have Jeremy Pennell from Triodos Bank, Isla McCulloch from Cooperatives UK, and Andy O'Brien from Bristol Energy Co-op. So next slide, please, Kim. For those of you who have never joined us for a member call before, these are a 1-hour member-only space. We usually hold these on the last Tuesday of every month, and we have a sector-focused topic for each call. Please do always let us know if there's any topics that you would like us to cover. These calls are for you, our members, so it's really important that we tailor them to your interests and your needs. So please do feedback to us on kind of topics that you'd like to see on future calls. Our member calls hopefully aim to allow you to connect with each other and to us at CEE as well. It's a chance for you to see us and meet us and ask us questions. It's an opportunity for you to hear about CEE member resources and other up-and-coming activity and CEE events. As I've just mentioned, it's a place for you to feed back to CEE and our priorities, and we hope that these calls help you connect and help the network grow together. Next slide, please. Sorry, next slide, please, Kim. So a quick introduction to Community Energy England. Community Energy England was founded in 2014 by practitioners within the community energy sector to act as the voice of the sector and help put people at the heart of the energy system. So our membership has grown to just over 285 community energy organisations and includes a range of community groups and stakeholder organisations. We are the national network and representative body for community energy and the voice for the sector in England. All our work is intended to help clear obstacles, create connections between practitioners and stakeholders, and facilitate the work of community energy organisations, therefore benefiting the sector as a whole. So really, we're here, we are the voice, and we're here to help you and your work grow and develop. Next slide, please, Kim. So we do a lot of national policy and advocacy work. So we work to make politicians, national and local government and network operators aware of community energy benefits, the sector's needs, opportunities and policy obstacles. This is to ensure that community energy organisations are able to create new projects and play an active and important role in the energy transition. If you want to find out more about current policy work and activities, please do take a look at our policy and advocacy section on our website, and Kim will be popping a link into that page so you can navigate to it. You'll also be able to see our current consultations, our active campaigns and policy responses there, as well as find guidance and resources for how you can play your part as well. Duncan Law, who's our head of policy and advocacy, hosted a policy-focused member call back in July. He provided a really great update on kind of key policy updates and issues affecting the sector. It was recorded, so you are able to catch up on this call if you wish to. It was posted on Lumio, and if you can't find the recording, let me know and I can share the link with you. Next slide, please, Kim. So Lumio, our community groups hopefully know of Lumio. It's our community-only practitioner online forum. It's for our community group members only, with a caveat of we are hopefully opening it up more widely in the coming months. If you are from a community group, you should have received an invitation to join the forum as part of you signing up to this call. We would really encourage all community members to become members of the forum. The forum really encourages you to move beyond emails and to connect directly with the sector. You can ask questions and work issues and work through challenges together in the forum. We find it generates a lot of really useful and engaging conversations between members, and it's a really great space to be part of. It offers assistance. As I've mentioned, you can share experiences and you can talk openly with each other and share documents, videos and other resources as well, which may be useful to other community groups who are at different stages of their journey. We hope the platform also helps you to kind of become and feel part of our community as well. Next slide, please, Kim. Lovely. So we've come now, it's now time to hand over to our first speaker, so Jeremy from Triodos. Jeremy will be discussing how Triodos can help community groups raise capital to fund their projects. As a reminder, speakers have 6 to 8 minutes. We'll kind of be keeping speakers to time. Please put your questions for Jeremy in the chat box. I'll be collecting those and we'll do the Q&A session once we've heard from all of our speakers today. So thank you, and over to you, Jeremy.
Great, Lisa. Thanks very much for that, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me on the call, especially at lunchtime when you're sure you're getting a bit peckish. So there's a few familiar names in the chat, but for those of you who are less familiar with Triodos, I thought I'd just spend 5 or 6 minutes giving a bit of an overview. So we've been around in the UK for a while, circa sort of 1980, so 45 years, and we're fairly pioneering back in the day in the sense that we were supporting renewable energy projects when fairly few other mainstream bankers were, and that remains true today. So renewable energy does remain quite a large proportion of the bank's overall lending portfolio, and we remain committed to the sector. But this session really is more around the other service that we provide, and that's part of the team that I'm in, which is the corporate finance group. So I wanted to go and explore a little bit about our role and how we can help. So if we could hop on to the next slide, please, Kim. So alongside the conventional bank debt that you might associate with a bank providing like Triodos, where that's lending to renewable energy schemes secured against those renewable assets, we also have an advisory team, and that's the team that I'm part of. And we work with all manner of organisations, but in terms of this sector, with privately owned and community-led renewable energy groups to help them get their schemes off the ground. So we'll work with them to understand what their financing requirement is, what the right sort of capital for them might be, whether it's a withdrawable share offer if you're a community benefit society, whether it's a community bond if you're a KIC limited by guarantee, and then what the right terms attached to that sort of finance might be. If it's what's the interest rate or the return to investors, what's the repayment period, all of that sort of thing we would help advise on and structure. And then we would be responsible for that financial forecasting and going out and writing the offer document that you would present to your investor community, the investors that you'd want to come in. And we've been doing that for certainly for the entire time I've been at Triodos, which is 13 years. Raised over £200 million in that way for about 90 projects, and a good proportion of those have been renewable energies. It's one of our key sectors, actually, and particularly for community-led schemes. So we raise that not from the bank. We have an investment crowdfunding platform. So we have 6,500 investors on there that want to put their money into community-led projects, community-led renewable energy schemes. So in a way, we're connecting the two. We're connecting the community project and we're connecting the investors, and we're doing the advisory piece in the middle, and we're helping to go out and raise funding for that. And alongside our own 6,500 investors, the bank behind us has about 90,000 customers, some of whom have appetite to support community-led initiatives as well. And those graphics on the right just give you a bit of a flavour. Not all of those are community schemes, a couple of them are private, but it gives you a bit of a flavour of the sorts of projects that we support. And you can see they're not all community share offers, some of them are community bonds, and I can talk a little bit about that on the next slide. So if we could hop on, please, Kim, that'd be great. So what do we do and what do we not do? So as I said, we're legal form agnostic. So we do actually support privately owned schemes, but a lot of the work we do is community-led, community-owned renewable assets. So that's vehicles that might be structured as BENCOM, so community benefit societies, or charitable foundations. Our last offer was actually structured as a charitable foundation, or KICs, limited by guarantee or shares. And we've supported offshore wind. We've supported all sorts of renewable schemes, from solar, a lot of wind projects more recently, and then probably 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, we're doing quite a few hydro schemes as well. This session is about community shares, and that's wrapped up in the sorts of capital that we do. We have supported community share offers. Equally, we do community bonds, which is a little different. It's a debt instrument. It's a bit like a loan, where our investors are lending to the community group to help them get their scheme up and running or to refinance it. as I said, this isn't Triados's money. We're an advisory group, so we're not sitting on pots of money. We're just pursuing the bank's mission, and we're helping organisations to raise that funding. And sometimes we'll go out to third-party impact-motivated investors, but most of the time we're raising that from our own crowdfunding audience. It's about 6,500 investors who want to invest directly in these sorts of projects. And we've raised up to sort of £5 million, more than that actually, £7 to £7 million for some of our renewable projects. But in the main, our sweet spot is 500,000 to 3 million. So obviously aware that some of the financial promotion restrictions are less onerous for community share offers. So a withdrawable share offer for Bencom, for example, has less restrictions. So a lot of community groups can go out to their own community and try to raise that funding themselves. So you might be thinking, well, why ask Triodos? So I guess for us, our role is that advisory piece, working out how to raise funding, what's the right sort of funding, what is a community share offer, what's a community bond, which one's right, what's the terms of those, what's going to be attractive to investors, and then going out and trying to raise the funding. Mindful that we got a couple of minutes, so I think historically we raised a lot of construction finance, so building ground-mounted solar schemes, putting wind turbines into the ground, developing hydro schemes, but equally for schemes that are already up and running and maybe borrowed quite expensively to get to that point, will help to refinance that borrowing, hopefully on a slightly cheaper route. And we'll look at all things. Obviously, the world of renewables is very different to where it was 10 years ago. So now we will support. We will look at supporting subsidy-free schemes if they're 100% backed by a decent power purchase agreement, with the buying party is creditworthy. Then we'll look at that. And then equally, we've looked at schemes more recently where a community group or privately owned groups come to us. They've got a couple of wind turbines already that benefit from subsidies. But they're looking to build a new one that doesn't, and actually we can get that to work sometimes by having all of those assets in the same community group and benefiting from the subsidies on the older schemes whilst the new one doesn't have it. So we will look at sort of blended financing and income models. Actually, we're not beholden to any particular one. I think the key for us is that we do want to see community benefit here, so we do want to see some kickback to the community. So it's sometimes difficult to find a structure where you can pay a sensible return to investors and create community benefit and create a return to community withdrawable shareholders. And getting all of that to work can sound quite daunting for community groups. So we're there to try and structure that's something that can tick all of those boxes. And I guess the last point to make before we sort of pass over is that obviously the way that we work, we're not, this is a direct relationship between the community group and the investor. So the investor is the benefit of the interest or the return on the shares. We don't see that. So our income is generated through the fees that we charge for raising the capital, and sometimes we can access grants support community groups covering those fees just to take some of those initial costs out of the picture. I think I'll leave it there because I'm mindful that that's probably been about 6 minutes. I've lost track slightly, but if you've got any more questions, then ping them into the chat and I'm sure we'll get to that later on in the session.
That was lovely. Thank you, Jeremy. That was really great to hear about Triodos and how they can help with income generation. Thank you. Please do remember to pop questions for Jeremy and other speakers in the chat box, and we will pick them up at the Q&A session following our next two speakers. So we're now passing over to Isla McCulloch from the Community Shares Unit at Cooperatives UK. Isla is going to be providing an update on the wider community shares market and the Community Shares Standards Mark. I hope I've said that right, Isla. So over to you.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, nice to be here. Thank you so much for the invite. I'm Isla. As Lisa said, I work at Co-ops UK in the Community Shares Unit, which is a partnership between Cooperatives UK Locality and the Plunkett Foundation. As Co-ops UK, we have a lot of members, co-ops, community benefit societies across the UK who raise finance not just through community shares, also using bond mechanisms and other forms of capital. But I'm going to focus today on community shares specifically. So if we can go to the next slide, Kim, thank you. So what are community shares? I recognize quite a few names in the chat, so I think a lot of you will already know, but they're a flexible form of raising equity investment, importantly, adding value to your organization, and while doing so, building a collective membership of the organization and that collective accountability. They are withdrawable but non-transferable share capital in and bespoke and unique to cooperative and community benefit societies. So community shares doesn't mean anything in the law. It's a brand, it's a name that we've come up with for this type of capital. It's generally very patient and flexible, so the society sets the repayment terms or any financial returns, such as share interest and what the withdrawal rates are. And critically, they're not donations, but they do often get kind of lumped in with crowdfunding more broadly, and definitely sit in the middle of that scale between repayable finance and sort of more, donation-based crowdfunding. If we go to the next slide, Kim, thank you. So who are the community shares unit and what do we do? So quickly, we really promote best practice through overseen by the Co-op and Community Capital Committee, published in the Community Shares Handbook and embedded in the Community Shares Standard Mark. This is really important. We were established, as Jeremy rightly mentioned, raising capital through community shares is an unregulated activity. So we were established with support from central government and the Financial Conduct Authority, etc., to create a voluntary regulation scheme for the market. We know there's a lot of local accountability or internal accountability in the model already, and we know that the costs, if it became a regulated form of raising finance, would make this amazing form of raising capital really inaccessible to groups. So we campaign and advocate to maintain that unregulated status, but a lot of that is based on the fact that we have best practice standards and a voluntary regulation scheme. And we are actually currently in the process, UK Gov are in the midst of doing a whole post-Brexit consolidation of prospectus regulations. So we're feeding into that process at the moment. So it is still a live query. We embed all this best practice through our training and licensing program of community shares practitioners. And then on top of that, we are the main source of market intelligence on community shares through extensive data collection. Even with offers we never work with, I try and gather as much data as possible. And we publish regular market reports as well. So these are some stats from the report we launched earlier this year. And this isn't just energy, this is across the piece. We also act as a development funder and institutional investor in innovative community share offers through our Community Shares Booster Fund, which I'll come on to shortly. Next slide, please. So just a little breakdown, and I thought was interesting. This is a graphic from our latest market report in terms of how much you can see back in 2015. This is right as the feed-in tariffs were coming to a close, this big rush. 69% of all community share offers were in the energy sector. In 2021, that's only down to 14%. And the pub sector was booming with the introduction of the More Than a Pub program. So we're very aware with community shares how much external interventions, policy environments, funding availability, etc., really influences the market. And this is just an illustration of that. If we go to the next slide. Again, a couple of graphics I thought I would share from our latest market report that shows community share offers across all local authorities across the UK. Maybe not all, don't quote me on that, but loads of local authorities, lots of offers across the country, urban and rural. And then again, across lots of different sectors. So you can see a lot of energy represented there, and we're seeing more and more sort of innovative sector approaches come through. Next one, please. So the Booster Fund that I mentioned, we offer business advice, general advice and support. We call that pre-grant support. That's really easy to apply for. It can be a phone call or it's a super short form. And that's maybe 2 or 3 days of time to explore whether community shares are really right for the organization and what are the necessary next steps to get there. Development grants then cover the cost of developing and launching community share offers, including the Standard Mark award costs. And then we have this equity investment, which historically has been up to £100,000. Now we're looking at maybe a little bit less than that, but generally it's there as a match investment, and we invest on what we call pari passu, the same terms as the rest of the community, which is quite good. And then any investment, obviously we become a member of that society, so we'll attend AGMs if we can, feedback, and as a society, they become a member of ours at Co-ops UK and have access to all the advice and support we provide. Next slide, please. So there are sort of priority areas for the Booster Fund. Tackling the climate crisis is still always going to be one of our priorities. And we continue to support energy schemes or retrofit and different models as well. We're also interested in sort of the next generation, because our data shows, and we did a big survey, that I think it's less than 4% of community shares investors are under the age of 35. So it's an area of priority for us to look at. Also looking at digital transformation, best practice, and new models, and other kind of reaching underrepresented communities in the community share sector. Next slide, please. So a little bit on the standard mark. I've noticed a few of you in the chat who are representing societies who have attained the standard mark. It has to be awarded by fully licensed assessors, and the main thing is just around ensuring the offer documentation is clear, it's easy to understand, and it's not misleading in any way. Majority of societies who received the standard mark really believed it improved investor confidence, but also through the qualitative feedback we've had is that it really improved the society's confidence and their own board's confidence in their proposal and understanding of what they were offering to the public when they were engaging their community around investment. So it gives structure to that process. Like I say, it helps manage that potential reputational risk, and that comes back to our policy approach. We know that the sector is still quite small, and it wouldn't take many big screw-ups to kind of make people really conscious, whether that's within government or within the general public or media eye. So I feel a responsibility to ensure that we're managing reputational risk for the whole sector, not just for the individual societies. And as I mentioned, they're overseen by this committee, and we have elected community shares practitioners on that committee as well to ensure a really good feedback loop around that. So if we go to the next slide, just to give you a wee idea from the Booster Fund of some of the societies, and I know a couple in the room, we've also supported other societies with development grants and things as well, but this is a list of the ones we've invested in recently: Grimsby, Brighton, Reading Hydro, Dane Valley, who are coming back with another solar offer, North Kensington Community Energy, who are pictured here, and Crew Energy in London. But like I said, we've got quite a few that we've supported with development grants who haven't progressed to equity. That's not a condition of our support that you progress to that stage. And then there's also organisations in the pipeline that we're supporting at the moment. So if you have any questions on any of this, I appreciate it's a whistle-stop tour. Please do feel to pop them in the chat or get in contact with me afterwards. If you want to go to the next slide, my contact details are on there. I might also send this over as a PDF because I've noticed some of the formatting's gone a wee bit awry. But yeah, do get in touch if there's any questions at all. Thank you.
Thanks, Isla, that was brilliant. Please do pop your questions for Isla into the chat box. And Isla, yes, if you could share it as a PDF, that would be really useful for us to share as a resource following the call today. Brilliant, thank you. So we're on to our third and final speaker, who is the director and co-founder of Bristol Energy Co-op, Andy O'Brien. Andy will be sharing learnings from previous share offers that have been run by Bristol Energy Co-op. So over to you, Andy. You're on mute, sorry, Andy.
Okay, can you all hear me?
Yes, perfect, thank you.
Great. Okay, yeah, thanks so much, Lisa. Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me. So Andy O'Brien, I'm a co-founder and director of Bristol Energy Co-op. Our first share offer was back in 2012, and we're just on to share offer number 9 at the moment. So yeah, we've done a few, and yeah, some hard-won experience. So hopefully I can share some good tips with you. Next slide, please, Kim. So I thought I'd just start off going back a bit, actually, before actually talking about share offers. The very first project, say, you're doing, some top tips, I'd say that almost like we learned after the event. So start with something achievable. Don't go for something really, really big at the outset. Do commit to it. Once you really decide that you're going for it, then do commit. Do have like a monthly meeting, which happens whatever, that sort of thing. Share the load to avoid that burnout. And so make sure you map out the skills that your team needs. You know, there's lots of different skills, whether some people are really good administrators, some are really good at social media, some people like finance. Yeah, map out all those skills, share them around. And there may be some skills that you don't have internally. So look externally for those skills. So use networks. If you talk to your local sustainability officers at your council, they may have some support that they can offer. That may be technical assistance, or they may actually have assets that you can use as well. And there's a lot of co-working going on with the local authorities at the moment. And in the same way, a lot of the bigger regional offices of lawyers and finance firms, they've got a lot of staff who actually want to join groups like us. And also quite a lot of those companies will do some pro bono work. So yeah, I'd definitely get involved. Contact them and see what they can do for you. Kim, is it possible you can scroll down or make it slightly smaller? I can't see what I've written underneath that paragraph.
I don't think I can do that, but we will share them afterwards, Andy. Sorry about that.
Okay, let me just see if I can. Oh yeah, I'll just have a quick look at my own PDF. So the last one says, be prepared for bumps in the road and be patient, because everything always takes longer than you think. Okay, next slide, please. So again, just thinking a bit almost like after the event, when we did our very first share offer, we were so focused on raising the money that we slightly sort of forgot about what happens next, that you've got an asset which may well be running for 20 years, and you need to really think about who's going to look after that asset. Where will you keep your register of members, that sort of thing. So it's good to have a bit of a think about that as you're doing the share offer, because that will definitely affect how you do things longer term. And hopefully, if you're successful with your first one, you'll be looking to do more projects. And yeah, you want to start thinking about how will you look after all those elements later on. Moving on to the actual share offer itself, yeah, you've got an option. You can either use a platform, or you can do it yourself. And I suppose there are pros and cons. With our very first one, we did it ourselves, but since then we've been using a platform where you get a lot of help to do that, and there's an existing pool of investors who could invest in your share offer. There's a lot of support now. I mean, we worked very closely with Cooperatives UK when we did our first share offer, and that was so supportive. And my fourth slide actually gives you a list of some of these organisations. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of help out there now, and that makes a big difference. With your first share offer, I'd say start with a small target and aim to overshoot, rather than aiming for a slightly bigger target that may be more difficult to raise. Definitely do include a marketing budget in that project budget, because it's going to be really crucial that you do that. And if you haven't got some really good social media people within your team, then I would definitely buy that in, because it makes a huge difference. As part of that marketing, you really want to warm up your local neighbourhood to your share offer well in advance of launching it. And hopefully that should be not too difficult to do, because when we started, there wasn't social media. So these days, there are already lots of local social media groups that represent your local area. So it's much easier now to get that word out. But it's really key that you keep telling people what's happening. Make sure that you are sure enough in what you're saying that it is actually going to happen. Don't put out lots of stuff that you're not really sure whether it's going to happen. So keep your messaging really supportive and enthusiastic, but don't overpromise. And then when you actually launch, or just before you launch, make sure that you've got your key supporters primed to invest immediately it opens, because that way you'll get some initial momentum. The percentage raise will shoot up quite quickly, and then that will give other people encouragement to invest as well. And you'll find actually that many people leave it to the last minute to invest, and they just do. So don't worry too much if you haven't got all your money raised fairly close to the end, that you do still have a chance for quite a lot of people to come in at the last minute. Okay, next slide, please. So in terms of the share offer document itself, do use plain English, and obviously the community shares unit people can really help with that, but it is key. It's a very different sort of investment to somebody who's investing in the stock market. And the key message, I think, is that you're investing for a social and an environmental return as much as a financial one. And that's really key to say that, because that's what differentiates us from the more traditional crowdfunding sector. And as your share offer is running, keep producing lots of engaging content throughout it. And that's where, if you haven't got that in-house expertise, do pay for it externally. It's worth it. And don't make all those posts just about the investing. People want to know more about what you do anyway, and about the wider sector as well. And because community energy is still completely hidden to the vast majority of the population. So the more people we can bring into it, the better. So yeah, spend some time talking about what other community groups are doing, and Community Energy England and all that sort of stuff. The other thing is, when you do start getting the word out, amazing things happen. All sorts of people will get in touch who you've never heard of before. And they won't necessarily just be offering money. They may be offering lots of other types of supports, and it just builds up the networking capacity of not just your group, but more and more across the sector, across the country. We need to be building our networks and joining up all the dots, and doing a share offer definitely helps from that point of view. You're not alone. Lots of help out there, and we are within an increasing number of community support organisations. So my final slide just has a quick list of some of those. So you can see there, Cooperatives UK, startup support and funding resources, Power to Change, and then Co-op UK's Community Shares Handbook in particular. It's been very useful to us. In terms of network and signposting, there's a lot of information available from Community Energy England, particularly on the Lumio forum. It would be worth you joining Regen if you don't know them. They're really, they do a lot, not just with the community sector, but also with the commercial sector and local authorities, and fantastic technical resource. I would really recommend you joining them. Other grant funding available. We've got the net zero hubs, which are supported by the government. So I think there are 6 of those throughout the country. So they do have regional funding, which you can apply for. There's also a big list on the Community Energy England website of various grant organisations out there. Also, if you're, say, having trouble actually finding your first scheme, then there are various community organisations who can help with that. So I've just listed a few of them there. But yeah, they'll all help you find a scheme, and you need to factor in that there's a cost in them doing that. So you need to factor in those costs into your project costs. That's very useful. And more and more, the various community groups are working really closely together. So if you're struggling to find a scheme, but actually there's another established community energy group quite close to you, then contact them and see if you could work together etc. Also, in terms of longer term asset management for your scheme, if you want somebody else to look after it, then there are a number now of community organisations who specialise in that. So I've listed a few there. And finally, I think just scroll down to that bottom of that last one. Yeah, the fundraising platforms. We've mentioned Triodos. There's also Ethics, there's Abundance. We personally have used Ethics quite a lot. But yeah, they're all good. They all provide a lot of expertise that a startup group really needs to have and can do a lot of hand holding. And as I say, they all provide access to an existing pot of potential investors. So that's obviously a really big plus. And just gets your message out there. Okay, that's all for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. That was brilliant. Loads of really great information and other kind of signposting resources that people can use. Thank you. That's really interesting. Brilliant. We've heard from our 3 speakers today. Thank you to all of them. We have had a few questions that have come in as our speakers have been presenting. So I will just get those questions up. And if the speakers are happy to jump in, I'm going to start with one from Richard Lane from Share Energy. He said he'd actually be interested in hearing from each of the presenters kind of a reflection on the impact of the cost of living crisis on community share investment. Has there been any sharp drop-offs, any sign of recovery at the moment? And where do you see this going in the near future? So I don't know if anyone would like to start or anyone has a strong reflection on that.
Shall I start from our perspective?
Thank you.
Yes, it's a good question. I would say the challenge for us has always been lack of good quality community renewable schemes as opposed to lack of funding. So we've always been able, even in the current macro climate where there are cost of living challenges, to raise full funding for the projects that we're looking to support. So I would say it hasn't been a barrier to getting those projects funded. What I would say is that it might take a bit longer, and we are definitely seeing the average investment from any given individual reducing. So that effectively means we just have to have a broader pool of funders, investors, to raise the same level of funding that we might have done 2 years ago. But it doesn't stop us raising the capital. So I wouldn't see that as a barrier. If there's a good quality community group with a good team behind it, and a good investment proposition with good community impact, creating renewable benefit, then I think you will be able to raise the funding. It just might take a little bit longer than even 12 months ago, to be honest.
Thanks, Jeremy. Andy?
Yeah, it is a tricky one. I mean, when we launched this current share offer, we thought long and hard about what interest rate to use, and it was a bit higher than the rates that we were offering a couple of years ago. And we are finding that this particular share offer is going more slowly than previously. And it's, I think, possibly a number of factors in play. One of them being that, the cost of living crisis. But I'm not sure it's the only one. In the last year, the FCA have actually put out some more stringent sort of sign-up criteria. I think that's making some difficulties for some investors. I think at the moment, particularly in shares, I think that possibly the hardest thing is the fact that there are bond offers on a number of these sites, and we've done bond offers in the past, and we don't rule out doing them again. But bond offers can also run as a innovative finance ISA, so that you can get sort of tax relief on that. So we are finding that bonds at the moment are probably on at a higher rate than share offers, and I think that's attracting a higher proportion than, say, share offers. Where it goes from here, it's hard to say, really. I mean, it's a real balancing act, because we can't raise our share interest rates too high, because the cost of our installations is increasing as well, because the cost of construction costs have gone up, etc., etc. So it's a balancing act. If we put them too high, it means that some of our projects won't be viable in the first place. So more and more, I personally feel that you have to stick to your guns about what we are. And we want people to be members, because we want them we don't just want their money. We want them to get involved. We want them to be joining boards, joining working groups, spreading the message, getting involved with all sorts of activities that Community Energy England offer. Whether it's actually lobbying, say, your local MP, we want all those people to be getting involved. And when they become a member, that's what you get from them. Whereas if they're just investing in a bond, the relationship isn't quite so strong. So my feeling is we hang on in at the sort of rate we've got at the moment, keep pushing that same message, and just accept that it is going to take longer, but we believe in what we're doing, really.
Thanks,
I think
Andy.
Andy made some really good points there. Kind of took some of the words out of my mouth, Andy. But yeah, the ones that we see doing well tend to be that have that kind of local rootedness, and where there's a good heavy chunk of the investors who can see some local tangible benefit to themselves. So like I was looking at the Tallsbury Climate Partnership one in Essex recently. That was really interesting, and didn't use a platform, didn't actually have to appeal that much to external impact investors, because the local community themselves had kind of driven the offer and would see a lot of the tangible benefits of it themselves. And that's where also kind of lower interest rates are much more appetizing when there's that direct tangible benefit, which has often been quite hard to quantify with community energy projects. But we're seeing a lot more community energy projects really articulating that better, or having it really driven by the local community in the first place. And I think if you can get that good balance, I don't know exactly what the balance would be, but of local investment, people who are generally going to be members or get involved in some way, with also leveraging the wider sort of more impact investors through Trade-off and other platforms, it's a good combination to have. Do you want me to answer that question about the age thing that Richard's raised?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I'm
jump
just
in on that one.
intrigued. Yeah, I also want to know more, and I wish we could drill down. We drilled down a wee bit, and the under 35s also didn't invest as much, it's fair to say. We did see a big thing around tax relief and how that did influence people investing more. That's one of, and it's a real shame that also energy offers are now not eligible for tax relief, and we're kind of keeping that on our policy agenda as well. But speaking to the FCA, under 35s invest a lot in crypto and Bitcoin and things that are really not as tangible and impactful necessarily. So I don't think it's so much the risk factor, it's the appeal, and it's how easy is it to do online. I think a lot of these things you can just download an app on your phone and you can invest within minutes, whereas a lot of community share offers are still a bit tech light in how we accept applications for share capital, whether you have to create an account on a platform, or how easy is it to invest? Do you have to download a PDF and post it in someone's door? That's never going to happen for a lot of people who maybe feel time poor but do want to invest their money in interesting things. So I'm kind of interested in the tech aspect as well of how to get young people investing.
That's really interesting. Thank you.
No
Yeah.
worries.
Thanks, Isla. Because off the back of that, Nick, Andy, this is to you. Again, on the under 35s, asked, have you had much success getting younger investors? And if so, have you got any tips on how to do this?
I wouldn't say we have many, but what we've definitely done in this latest round, we spent significant time actually working with God, I've got the name. What do you call the social media influencers? That's the word, influencer. We've really reached out and to work with influencers who are active in this space, and that's been fantastic, because again, we want to bring in other people who are willing to campaign. I see us more and more almost like a little bit of a bridge between, say, Extinction Rebellion, Just Stop Oil. There are all these people coming in who want to do things, And this is one way of actually, sometimes they're not sure what they can do, and community energy is a way of bringing them in and showing them what they can be doing at their, in the local environment, and they can actually see how much is already underway in the local environment. So we deliberately set our share up a minimum at a very low rate, so that there's not a barrier from that point of view. And it's early days. I mean, certainly it's been fantastic to pick up a whole load of new followers. But I think it will take longer for them to necessarily invest in us. But they can, of course, sort of point their parents in the direction of us. So that's one thing that is possible.
Brilliant. Thanks, Andy. I've got a couple of questions for you, Jeremy. First one from Tim from Brampton and Beyond Energy is asking, have Triodos ever supported a community anaerobic digestion scheme? We would be looking to raise up to 2 million. Would this be viewed as too high risk?
Yes, we have. Historically, sadly, it probably would be too high risk for us. So the bank, and talking about on the lending side more than on our crowdfunding side, has had its fingers burnt a few times by AD-based schemes. So it's very tricky for us to get internal comfort on them, unfortunately. So that's why you see nearly all of our projects around solar, hydro and onshore wind, sadly, sorry.
Brilliant.
It's a shame.
Mike from Staffordshire Community Energy asks, what level of interest is Triodos charging on its loans?
Yeah, so just to be clear then, so obviously my team is not lending, we're raising capital. So this is us effectively designing a community share offer or a community bond where the investors are the investors. So I guess the broader question is what's the cost of interest on a community share offer or on a community bond at the moment? And that's the $1 million question. And he's obviously got a live community share offer on FX at the moment. I think that's at 5%, isn't Andy? Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, of late, we've actually been doing more community bonds. We can talk through why that is. Our most recent one was for a charitable foundation called Empower, which had a community solar scheme up in Angus in Scotland. The price of the bond was 6.5%. So compare that to a year ago where the same foundation, or 18 months ago where the same foundation raised funding for a scheme in Wiltshire where we actually priced at 4.25%. A lot has changed in that time in terms of base rates and Bank of England rates, and that does have a bit of a bearing because obviously those investment opportunities have to make sense in the context of what's happening in the world around it. So as Bank of England rates have gone up, those community bond rates have gone up, and we do tend to RPI link them. So we inflation proof them in a sense, not the capital, but we inflation proofing the interest. And most schemes are able to do that where there's fit benefit that's also, if they have residual subsidy benefit that's fit, that is RPI linked. So as their income rises, they can sometimes afford to ensure their interest follows the same pattern. I think Andy's probably best to give you a bit of a flavour of the cost of community shares. He's eloquently alluded to the fact they are probably slightly below community bonds at the moment. You probably looked across Triodos and likes of FX as well. You probably see those community bonds at about 6%, 6.5%, and community share offers potentially being targeted at slightly less than that.
Thanks, Jeremy. Have you got anything to add to that, Andy?
No, that's right, really.
Okay, I'm just going to finish off with one last question for you, Andy, which has come from Pete from Bonsall Energy Group. So Pete asks, what do you mean by achievable? Can you share an example? And I think that was from one of your first slides. Yeah.
So I think what I meant is like our very first share offer was for rooftop solar and community buildings, for two rooftops. And in the end, we raised the funds, over-raised, and managed to do three buildings. So I think it'd be better to start off with yeah, share up maybe 1 roof or 2 roofs rather than 10 roofs, or even maybe do that rather than say a solar farm, unless you've got a beautiful project that someone is pretty much giving to you ready made. Then doing a solar farm is hard work, and there's just so many working parts to it that doing that and raising the funds for it will be quite tricky. So yeah, I'd start with a physically smaller project using, say, a technology that everybody's aware of and understands, so that hopefully there's lots of well-worn processes and people that you can work with to get that over the line. And then once people see you've got a track record and your name's got out there, then obviously you can start doing larger and larger schemes.
Lovely, thank you. Just keeping an eye on the time, I think we'll end questions there, but if anybody thinks of anything following the call, please either reach out to myself, or if the speakers are happy to, we'll share contact details so you can reach out to speak to speakers following the call. Well, thank you. Okay, Kim, if we can go to the next slide. Just before we go, I'm just going to mention just a few CEE member resources that are available to you to support you and your organisation. Please don't forget our national map of community energy projects and locations. We're getting on average over 5,000 views a month, so it'd be really great to keep this going, keep it updated, keep things moving with the map. If you've got any development ideas or anything you'd like to see on there, please do again feedback to me and let me know, and we can look at kind of how we can add that to the map. You can sign up through a link on our webpage, and if Kim could share that in the chat, that would be brilliant. Also, please do share your news with us, good, bad, challenges, barriers, anything that you think would be useful for us at CEE to know, or anything you'd like to share with the network. We can promote your share offers, we can promote your projects, we can promote your jobs, jobs that are within your organisation. So do let us know. We'll get them on our website and get them out in our newsletter as well. I popped the link to our funding resources page in the chat earlier. That's kept up to date of all funding opportunities that we are aware of. We've got a really great funding database there as well. And our how-to pages are forever in development, always being updated. So please do keep your eye on the how-to pages and our funding information. Next slide, please, Kim. I think this is just touching on what I've already said. And again, next slide, and I think actually over to you, Kim. I think Kim's going to give us an update on some key CEE events that are coming up in the next few weeks and months. Thanks, Kim.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, so the main one I want to talk about is the awards, Community Energy Awards, that is coming up on the 17th of November in Manchester. But significantly, I just want to make you all aware that the award nominations are still live until Friday. So if you haven't already considered putting in a nomination, please do head over to our website and get some, have a look at the award categories and consider putting your nomination in this week. So yeah, the deadline is this Friday, but hopefully we will see many of you there in November. The other events that I just want to mention is that on the same day as the awards, we're going to have our autumn conference in the afternoon of that day. We're going to be announcing some details on that early next week, but it will have a policy focus with a kind of general election focus as well. So please keep an eye out for that, and we'll share a bit more information with our members next week on that. And we've also, coming up in a couple of weeks' time, many of you will know that there's going to be a community energy fund, and that those funds are going to be available. It's going to be launched in the next couple of weeks. So we are going to do a webinar on the community energy fund with the Net Zero hubs, and we'll announce some details on that very soon as well. Yeah, so just keep posted. Okay, thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, Kim. So yeah, do keep your eye out in our member newsletter. We'll be putting more information on all of our events there. So hopefully we'll have more information on the Community Energy Fund webinar as soon as possible. So really, that's it for today. Thank you so much to all of our speakers. Really appreciate your time and everything that you've given to the call. Thank you so much. Thank you also to members that have joined today. It's been really great to see you. Please do feedback. please let us know if if you want to see something else, want the calls to be shaped in a different way. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And hopefully everyone's ready for a good lunch now. So thank you once again, and I'll hopefully speak to you all soon. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. I'll just see you, and should we go to our Google room and